Right, I'm live, and I'm just waiting for all the attendees to drop in, all the thousands that are joining us here today for our launch. So there's one, we've got one. I know there's others. So, I know all you guys can't actually hear them yet because I made them all mute themselves so we wouldn't be too noisy. But yeah, so everybody's dropping in at the moment, and then we'll kick off for this fantastic event that's taken Mary a lot of organisation. So it's great. And we've got a good number here today and some new names, which is always really good to see as well. So, and I shall be bullying you all to join the society before the end of this session. So get your checkbooks out. You will, well, no, we don't do that anymore, do we? You'll be all sending direct debits via your phone to the society immediately. Right, let's see how we're doing on everybody dropping in. So I think we're pretty much there. We'll probably get a few others joining us in a bit. So hello and welcome to the Great SCRIPTORA book launch. I'm Becca Harding and I'm chairman of the Society of Women Writers and Journalists. So today I'm joined by a whole raft of guests, far more than I usually have. So I feel very privileged to be in such great company. So for each of the books we're launching today, we have the author and they're being interviewed by another writer. So I'll introduce everybody as we go along. I do need to tell you something about SCRIPTORA though. So SCRIPTORA is our publishing arm, and we run a scheme that helps members to branch out and be published in a genre that's new to them. So for example, we might have a published journalist, dramatist or poet who wants to write a novel or has written a novel and wants to get published. So SCRIPTORA can also help writers of short stories or poetry to reach a new readership. So for example, by publishing an anthology of their work. All the manuscripts go through a rigorous vetting process by professional editors, and as with any submission to a commercial publisher, we do exactly the same. So it makes it an assisted publishing facility, and more information is available on our website if anyone else is interested. And today we are here with our 4 authors who have all been published as a result of the stream, which is brilliant. And if you have any questions for any of the guests today, or in fact any of the interviewees, then please use the Q&A box on the bottom right-hand side of your screen, which hopefully you can all see. So just click on that and it will give you an option to ask a question. So let me welcome all our guests today. You can all turn your microphones on and say hello to start with. So hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. They are alive. That's good. That's good. And we can hear them. Excellent. Excellent. Good start. So we're going to, we're basically going to work in twos. And now I know that they all are there and alive and healthy and kicking. I'm going to ask them all to turn their microphones off again, apart from Pamela Birley and Pamela Payne, and Pamela's going to be launching her book, The Four Masks of Deception. And she's writing as Bradley Bernarde, who I think sounds really attractive, actually. I think he sounds quite dishy, doesn't he? But that is in fact Pamela. And Pamela worked in personnel and joined the SWWJ in 1986 when she started her writing career. Her first novel, The Apothecary's Gift, was followed by 2 e-book novels. She did a paperback and a number of short stories, and some of which achieved a place twice in the Winchester Writers' Competition. And our interviewer for Pamela is another Pamela, Pamela Payne. And she caught the reporting bug at the age of 12 when she was published in the magazine of her UK school. At 16, she went to secretarial college at her father's insistence, apparently, before finally getting into journalism by the back door and becoming personal assistant to the RAF Public Relations Officer in Nairobi. She's very glamorous. She travelled the world. So, and she worked for various people in the forces. And then finally, when her youngest started school, she became a staff reporter on a paper and then subsequently did lots and lots in the writing world, amazing achievement, including running writing groups and courses. She also wrote for the Financial Times in their Resident Abroad magazine. So Pamela Payne, I hand over to you as interviewer.
Thank you very much, Becca. I am on, aren't I? Yes. I'd like to welcome Pamela, my friend and the author of this wonderful book, sorry. Pamela, could you tell us a little bit about Four Masks of Deception, without giving too much of the plot away, of course?
Yes, I was inspired actually by the lockdown. I wanted to write another Regency novel, I hadn't really got an idea. But then I saw everybody wearing masks. I decided I was going to make a mystery. And it all stems from a gentleman called Sir Robert Masters, who is part of the Good League. And he gets involved with characters, some of whom are from the Bad League. The Regency period was a very mixed period. You had the type of living that you always had from Jane Austen's books, but there was another kind. There was poverty, there was unemployment, there were the Corn Laws. And I wanted to illustrate for people who wanted change, but didn't want anyone to know they were working for change. And that's why I called it The Four Masks of Deception, because they were hiding behind the masks. Very different people. Sir Robert is a very calm, settled man, very private. His secret is that he helps poverty-stricken people, especially children, without anybody knowing. Mrs. Brace, whom he hires as a governess, is possibly the most unusual governess in existence. You'll find out why if you read the book. And then he has two friends, one of whom is loyal and kind. In an actual fact, he's not a very nice man at all. And the other one has suddenly become, for some unknown reason, an alcoholic. It was rather like making a cake. I put all the ingredients in a bowl, gave them a good stir, and hoped they would rise. And I think they might have. The eventual end is violent, but you will have to read the book to find out whether it was a good end or a bad one.
I particularly liked the female heroine, Mrs. Brace. She was quite a woman, and a complicated woman. How did you come up with her?
Well, Sir Robert, as I said, is a very detached young man, and due to an unfortunate circumstance when he was young, in which he'd arranged to elope and then discovered that the girl had gone off with someone else, he was very wary of women. So I had to create a character that was so different, a female character that was so different, it would not only intrigue, she would not only intrigue him, but he would find her irresistible as their relationship continued. Now, I enjoyed writing that part of the book more than any other part because I had a chance to make a man do what I wanted. And I did enjoy that.
I gathered that because she really is a terrific heroine, a real Bond girl in some ways. Why did you choose Chalton House as the
well, I needed all the established people in those days had a country estate, and I needed one for Sir Robert. And as we are affiliated, SWWJ is affiliated to Chalton, and we are friends of Chalton House, I got in touch with them and asked if I could possibly use Chalton House as Horton Hall, that's Sir Robert's stately home. And they not only agreed to that, but they said I could use a photograph of Chalton as the cover of my book. And that was so kind, and I'm so much appreciative because it has made the book look most attractive.
It's been beautifully produced, if I may say so, Mary, at SCRIPTORA. It really is a very pretty book. And it's the cover really says what's in the tin. You know, it's exactly the most beautiful manor house, but you don't know what's going on in there. I want to know if there's a secret tunnel in Chalton House.
Oh no, I was asked. I invented a tunnel from the church to the house. And they're all rather puzzled. And I said, no, it's invention. It doesn't exist.
You've written, two novels, haven't you, in the Regency period? You obviously enjoy that period.
Well, I was introduced to it very young via Jane Austen. And I do like it. But it's one of three periods. The other period is Cromwell. And I wrote a book about that. And the third one is the Tudor period, which I'm very interested in.
Which leads me on to the next question. What is your next project?
Well, I've got a family saga based on my own family heritage. One grandfather was a farrier in Nottinghamshire, and the other one was a Pole who had to escape from the Russians, and he came to England and settled here. It's an enormous tome because it goes from 1876 to the First Gulf War, and in order to try and establish it, I'm looking for that very mysterious individual known as an agent. Anybody interested?
Maybe one listening. And then after that,
well, as I mentioned, the Tudors, I have got a synopsis dealing with the Tudor period. I can't elaborate on it because it's too vague at the moment, but I can tell you that there is one of the things that is featured in it repeatedly is the Tower of London.
Oh, right. That sounds really good. We've got a little bit of time, I think, left, have we, Becca? So may I just ask about the children in your book? They are so well drawn.
Oh, yes. Well, what I wanted to do again was show the complete difference between 4 little chimney boys who have to go up and down the chimney to clean it, and Sir Robert's nephew and niece who are brought up within love and care and security. And Sir Robert is so horrified to see these 4 boys about to go up a chimney. He insists on adopting them, but the chimney sweeps are so furious he has to buy them. And he keeps saying to himself, buying a human being. See, Sir Robert is really not he doesn't really know about life.
He's not very worldly, is he?
No.
He's led a narrow, sheltered life.
Very sheltered.
Yeah. Well, as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, it really is a fascinating story. I read it in lockdown very quickly because when I got the book, but you wrote it in lockdown, Pamela.
Yes, I did spend the first lockdown writing that book. Yes.
And edited your next one, got that ready, and thought about a third one. For goodness sake, you're making me feel so guilty. I haven't done anything like that.
It all just flows out.
Very, very well done indeed. Does anybody have any questions that are we going on to questions, Rebecca?
No, I think we'll do those at the end, I think, if that's all right, Pamela. Yeah. But that's great. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Pamela. That was, I wish you all success with this book, and I know it's going to be a bestseller because I truly.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Right, ladies, do you mind turning off your microphones? And then if David and Barbara can turn theirs on, that would be great. I was slightly concerned during that when I saw David exiting and disappearing, and I thought, oh no, he's got cold feet, he's done a runner. That's it, I'm going to have to be a stunt double for the next minute.
I won't tell you what I was doing.
I don't think I want to know, David. It's fine. You can keep that to yourself, mate. Keep that to yourself. Right. So this is David Matthews, and he's here to launch his book, The Oxford Trinity. And The Oxford Trinity is his 3rd published book and his first venture into crime fiction. His previous books were a historical take on London history and an autobiography describing his experiences growing up in the 50s and 60s in the East End of London, which actually put me in mind of Peaky Blinders or something like that. And I had this vision of you with your cap on, strolling in slow motion up the road. Yeah.
It wasn't that long ago.
Our interview is Barbara Field-Holmes, and Barbara began her writing career as an apprentice on a local newspaper in North Kent. She went on to work on 3 different consumer titles: Prima Magazine, Ideal Home Magazine, and Home Improvements Monthly. I ought to get around. She can help with some of my DIY, actually. She might be better. She then worked on a number of industry-leading trade magazines before setting up her own public relations and editorial services business, Big In Words Limited. So I'm going to hand over to you 2. There you go, Barbara.
Hello, David.
Hello there.
This is your book, which I read early on in the lockdown year, and I thoroughly enjoyed it because I'm really into crime stories. So tell us a bit about your book and how you came to write it. why you changed to crime?
I think it was, I've always enjoyed a crime book like yourself. And I thought, yeah, I wonder what I could do with a crime story, fiction. And then I had to think of a theme and the type of thing that might sort of fascinate and interest. And I thought the idea of a series of mysterious nocturnal murders in public London gardens would be quite a good place to start, you know. So that's how I started. And yeah, obviously I've set it back in the 80s, which is obviously a period that I knew very well and lived through, and especially in London. And so it was quite an easy synergy there to put in and to start as a seed of an idea, you know. So I tried to keep it sort of quite mysterious, so it's a page turner as much as I can. I like to think I succeeded.
Oh yes, well you did for me. I couldn't put it down once I started. Your knowledge of the city and Oxford I was quite impressed with. So do both those places hold a significance in your life?
Definitely. I think along with Edinburgh, I would say they are my two favourite UK cities, Oxford and London. And so they've always had I mean, Oxford, I've always loved the collegiate atmosphere and the architecture and the history. Makes it quite a unique place and very English, isn't it? Yeah. So I've always had a fascination for Oxford. So I thought if I could combine the two, London and Oxford, and get a little mystery going between them, I thought that was a good link up.
Yes, no, I enjoyed that. So do you have a favourite crime writer that you got your inspiration from?
I suppose, I mean, it goes probably right back to when I was young. I mean, I got introduced to the Holmes stories, Sherlock Holmes, quite early on.
Right.
And I always found them sort of mysterious, a little bit macabre, but also strangely cosy. They was quite good stories, and so that was my original. But later on, I like the British classic crime writers like John Bude and Vincent Canning, those type of writers. You get them in the British Library, you know, they're quite classic writers, classic crime. And obviously Agatha Christie, I've always read a few of her books through the years. So yeah, I've always liked crime stories. So that's where I got that interest from. I mean, other writers that have always sort of been like people like Clive James, you know, Bill Bryson, and yeah, a couple of others that, you know, Peter Ackroyd, the historian. You know, those type of writers always feed my imagination as well.
Do you watch a lot of crime programs on TV to get ideas from?
Oh yeah. There's quite a lot of them on the telly.
Well, there are, yes. We do watch quite a few as well. So that's why I thought you might do.
Yeah.
So how long does it take you to write a book like that? How long did you have to spend researching?
Well, that particular book, it probably took me about a year to write it, but then of course comes the editing, and that probably almost took another, you know, year or so to get it exactly how you want it. The actual research, the side of it, of course, you've got Google now, so that's a big plus. So you can just, instead of going to the library and getting a book out, you can just go to the Google something. So whether I got stuck on a detail or something like that, I would just Google it, and it's amazing. You pretty much, there's not much you can't find out on Google, is there?
No, that's right. And do you have a favourite place that you like to write in, or a specific time of the day?
Yeah, I like to write in the mornings normally. I'd normally put a bit of music on in the background, and I've got a nice table that in the lounge that looks out onto the garden. So that's probably my writing place. That's the one where I can get my head onto the task in hand. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. The cover on the book I thought was really good. Where did that come from? Because that really makes it look mysterious, having it in the monotones.
Yeah, well, that was a little work with Mary. I mean, I told her roughly what I wanted. I wanted the red. Yeah,
that really stands out.
Yeah, but on a slightly sinister background, even though it's a well-known, obviously, site in Oxford.
Yeah.
And I had a chat with Mary, and I pinpointed that photo on, I think I looked that one up in Google, and then I showed it to Mary, and Mary give it the full treatment, Mary Rensten.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit of a, I'm glad you like that one. Yeah. I wanted to set the certain mood there with that one.
Yeah. It reminds me of one of my favourite authors, Nikki French. She has covers like this as well.
Yeah. Like, does it lure you in?
Oh yes, I think it does. Yeah, very much so. Yeah. Anyway, I really enjoyed that. I just wondered, are you planning any more DCI Joe Locksley books? Because I thought he was quite a nice character. I could picture him quite clearly.
Yeah. I mean, normally I need something new to get me writing juices going. So that's, I've actually just recently written one in lockdown, a Cornish crime story, nothing to do with Locksley, called Death on the Path, which I'm hoping to get published this year. But I mean, if I hear people like yourself saying that they enjoyed the Locksley character, then it could probably give me an incentive to do another one. To
do a sequel to it.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's whether I jump it forward from the 80s to a little bit further along the line into the 90s, or so I could do something like that. So I wouldn't rule it out.
Well, it looks as if your new writing career is really going to take off well, and I wish you all the very best with it.
No, well, thank you very much, Barbara.
Yeah.
Thank you.
How are we on time, Rebecca?
No, that's brilliant. You guys are being so well behaved. I'm like not having to cut anyone off or be rude and interrupt you and stamp around demanding that you finish. So that's brilliant. Thank you very much, you two. That was great.
Thank you.
Can we know where to buy it from?
We'll talk about where to buy the books at the end of the webinar, and we'll tell everybody where they can get them.
Okay.
So that's great. So if you two can turn yours off, Martin and Mary, turn your microphones on, please. So now these two are trouble.
Mary's not on.
Mary, let me do Mary. So
shall I dub Mary?
Could you turn your microphone on?
All right, I'm on now.
Oh, you're on now. Brilliant,
Yes.
Brilliant, excellent. Thank you very much. So, no, that's all great. So, Mary Rensten is launching her new novel, Her Almost Perfect Husband. So, Mary spent her childhood in Jamaica, and she went on to become a teacher, then a journalist, and finally a playwright. And she's had her plays published and performed professionally on the London Fringe. She also set up our SCRIPTORA scheme in 2010, so we really do have Mary to thank for it, and she's dedicated herself to it. As a result, she received an achievement award from Baroness Floella Benjamin at our 125th anniversary lunch 2 years ago. So she's been interviewed by Martin Court. Now, as soon as he completed his national service, he trained as an actor at the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art with fellow students Dame Janet Suzman and Donald Sutherland. He worked on numerous television series, including old favourites such as Dixon of Dock Green. You don't look old enough for that, Martin. You really don't.
Of course not.
He must have been a baby actor or something. And Doctor Who. He also exposed himself in Judge D, appearing naked. You knew I was going to pick up on this, didn't you? Appearing naked while strangling an attractive, unsuspecting young lady. Well, there you go. Fortunately, he's not tried that at any of our committee meetings. So he appeared at the Theatre Royal Haymarket in Hadrian VII and in the Regent's Park Theatre in The Taming of the Shrew. And then he decided to move into more serious work and was commissioned to write and direct 3 pantomimes by the London Borough of Camden. So I shall hand over to you guys.
Thank you. Hello, Mary.
Hello, Martin.
I thought I was going to have to do this all by myself.
Yeah, I know. I'm glad you haven't.
What I wanted to say was that how you always surprise me with your titles. I mean, I looked up and I saw Her Almost Perfect Husband. I always think of myself as a perfect husband. So how could you do that to someone? We have to read it to find out what's happened. Who made you sort of base these 2 characters who appear to be totally romantic and well adjusted into a story which well, it's puzzling, the title. What happens?
Well, I think that's what you want to know when you read a book, and that's why you read a book, isn't it? Find out what happens.
Ah,
And the title, well, a lot of books have what we call a strapline. Tells you a little bit more. And originally I did have one for this book, and then I think it was one of my daughters pointed out to me. She said, "You don't need a strapline,"
right.
and it's true, because her almost perfect husband, it tells you something extra. With David's book, we gave the strapline of "nothing to lose but his mind," which did, it did add to it greatly.
Yeah.
As for the cover, I just must give a credit now to the designers of the 4 books covers, because we write the book and then we get it printed, but the cover is so important, and I'm really proud of these covers. We have 2 wonderful designers, Jasmine, who did my book and also did Mary Rothwell's, and Carrie, who's done David's and also Pamela's. We work with the designers, and it goes backwards and forwards, a little bit lighter, a little bit darker, not quite the right colors, until both the writer and myself, until we are satisfied that it's the best that we can give to our readers.
Well,
I just want to put that bit in because I'm
let's
so
return
pleased
to
to
your
have these
book,
designers.
actually. Let's return to your book, because what
Yes.
fascinates me are the characters you've chosen. I mean, did you base them on real life people, or they all came out of your imagination?
All out of my imagination. But I think
Yeah.
every writer does that, but something subconsciously from your life comes in. And of course, there are lots of things in the book that I have actually experienced. And with one tiny little bit, but one of my reviewers asked me about this. In the book, one of the lesser characters, Constance, who is the sister of the heroine, goes up to the Edinburgh Festival. She's very excited because on the train, she's met a real life actress, and that's Joan Hickson. You may remember famously played Miss Marple. And there is a little bit in the book where Constance is watching the television and it's a Miss Marple. And she says, "Oh, not as good as the one, Joan Hickson." And it really excited her. And one of my reviewers asked if that had happened to me. Yes. Going up to Edinburgh to the festival with a play some years ago, and she was in the same carriage.
Well, it's obvious with some of the things that you tell us. I mean, you're familiar with Islington and
Very.
all of that area, and the theatre as well. You seem to be interested in that, and
Yes, that's
adding
the
that
king.
to the story.
That's the King's Head.
Yes,
Yes.
but it doesn't actually. It doesn't take, none of the drama really takes part there. And there are other names which I don't recognize, and little villages around which I find puzzling, because I actually come from Essex, and I used to drive around a lot, but I don't recognize.
Ah, well, I think we all do, this novelist. I've got in the book some places which are fiction and some places that are fact. So I have invented these villages of Pengate and Hewers Hill and Brockwood. But amongst that, you've got reality. You've got Hertford and Islington and Cheshunt and Waltham Cross. So, and I think, and at the back, I put in an author's note. And I like, when I'm reading a book, to know whether the places are real, which are real and which are fiction. And I know other people.
So adds to the credibility of your villages, so to speak, because we know where one place is. We know about Islington. Suddenly we go to this village, and you paint the picture so well that we could drive around there, but it doesn't exist.
Well, it's an amalgam actually of several villages, and I think lots of writers do that. But the story itself takes place mostly in Pengate. Do you want me to say a bit what it's about?
Well, It'd be nice to know a little more there.
Well, it's called Almost Perfect Husband. And the main character is a woman called Emma Raven.
Yes.
She thinks she knows everything there is to know about her husband. They've been married happily for 26 years. They have a son, 21. They even went to school together, Emma and Andrew. And then his business partner, Bernie Silver, they were at university together. They think they know this man thoroughly, but they're both very wrong. And when
they both become involved with Andrew in different ways, but very closely. I mean, a partnership and a business, which is Bernie's connection, and the marriage, of course. So they both know Andrew so well. You can't imagine them finding out anything which is disastrous.
No, but then when he is taken ill and has to go to hospital, right. And Bernie, who runs, they run a music business together. It's in Islington, Almeida Street, not really, and it's called That Music Place.
Will I find it if I go?
You won't find it. You won't find it. But what they do, Bernie needs some information from a little notebook, a little red notebook, which is kept locked in a desk.
Right.
And it's when they open, Emma gets to open the desk, which she's never been allowed into before, that all sorts of things come out.
Oh.
It all spreads from there. I'm not going to tell you anymore.
Well, that's quite a lot there for us to think about. Do you do a lot of research into your books? I mean, I mentioned the theatre in Islington, so you knew about that. Do you actually go and sort of visit shops and find out about these bookshops or what?
I didn't have to be quite honest, I did not have to do a lot of research for this book. I'd been to these places. I knew the things I was writing about. But I have done for other books, yes.
Well, I know Letters from Malta. You must have gone to Malta.
Oh, well, yes. 5 times I went to Malta. Yeah.
That wasn't torture then, was it?
No, that was lovely. It's a pleasure.
And what about Handful of Straw? Did you have a lot to do on that one? Because that must have been close to where you live.
Well, that second novel was a historical novel,
right,
set in 1712, based on a real case, the case of the trial of Jane Wenham, who was, well, supposed to be a witch, and she was tried in Hertford at the Assizes in March 1712. And there's a lot of documentation about it. And I use the original, always go back to the original sources. I use the original stuff for the background of the story. But then I created fictional characters. I mean, Pamela's book, she's got real people and she's got a story around all sorts of things that really did happen at the time.
Well, this is one of the things about your characters, Mary. You see, rather like the locations you give us, your characters are so real that it gets confusing. You can't find out where the actual truth is and where the fiction is. So that's one of your skills, I think.
Well, that's nice to know. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's very much what I experience with my children actually at home. It's like, where's the truth and where's the fiction? Who knows?
Oh yes, I know what you mean. Yes.
I just wanted to ask you before we finish, Mary, are you thinking of writing something else? I mean,
yes, but there's a problem. And strangely enough, in the new journal that came this week, our SWWK journal, Benita, one of our council members, our treasurer, she poses the same question. She started a novel pre-COVID. Is she now to go on writing it as if it happened pre-COVID? I mean, I have got one I've started. It's actually, Martin, I'm novelizing, I think that's the word, novelizing a play that was read at the drama group, because Martin is our drama consultant. And it's set in
the last one.
Sorry?
The last drama thing, what's it?
Yes, it's called Still Waters, and it's set in
Oh,
on a Scottish loch. Well, what do? Do I make it like Benita says? Do I go backwards, pretend it's happened 2 years ago, or do I wait for COVID to finish?
Yeah, and then
Because you can't have 10 people together on a barge now, can you?
No,
it's not allowed. So
everybody out there at the end, because I'd be quite interested to hear what people think as readers about that, because it's a question that everybody's been asking. But that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Martin and Mary. That's great.
Nice to talk. Thank you.
So can I ask you to turn your microphones off, please? And for Mary and Viv to turn yours on. So have you got yours, Mary? Brilliant. Oh, I'm thinking strange things. You're done. That's it. Right. So Mary Rothwell is launching her book, The Last Gift and Other Tales. She's a leading member of the Hastings Writers Group and Novae Literati, and has been for many years. She's won prizes for both her stories and for poetry, including the Catherine Cookson and the Norwich Open competitions. She was born in Harrow to a family of church organ builders, which is incredibly unusual and actually something I'd quite like to chat to you about. And she's lived in Hastings and St Leonard's since 1970. Mary's being interviewed by writer Vivian Brown. Viv started her writing career by winning the annual Mail on Sunday Best Opening to a Novel competition in 1993. And since then, she's sold more than 140 short stories to UK's women's magazines and 250 articles about working with children. She's done a book on crosswords, several humorous children's poems anthologies, and has had 4 women's contemporary novels published by HarperCollins. So I'll hand over to you, Viv.
Thank you very much. Well, last but not least, Mary, this is Mary's book, The Last Gift and Other Tales. And the title gives the clue away, really, that this is not a novel. This is a book of short stories. And I love a short story. I've written many of them myself. But unfortunately, they're not as popular as they once were. Even the women's magazines are starting to drop their fiction slots. So, Mary, I'd like to ask you, first of all, why short stories? What's special about them? And how do we get people to read them again?
Well, they're special because you can read it in one sitting. And there are 2 stories of mine that you could read while you're waiting for the kettle to boil. And they're short and they stimulate thought. A short story should, a good short story, should stimulate thought and sharpen your awareness of life, really make you think and give lasting pleasure. And there are many stories that I have read and some have stuck in my head for years afterwards.
Well, I've read your book and you definitely fit the category. A lot of your stories have stayed in my mind as well. There are, I think, 19 or 20 stories in this book.
19.
We're introduced to lots of characters in lots of situations. So when you're writing a short story, what comes first for you? Is it the plot? Is it the characters? Is it the setting or something else entirely?
I think it's character and setting. My stories mostly don't have plot, but if there is a plot, it's thinly disguised or it's too subtle and nobody notices it. But yes, character first, definitely.
There's not a lot of room for plot in a short story, to be honest, because often a short story takes place in just one day or even less than a day and in one place. So as for setting, a lot of yours are obviously in places that you know very well.
I know Hastings. I've lived here since 1970. So I know Hastings and St Leonard's, and I'm pretty safe writing about them. I think there's also one story set in Wales. I'm very fond of Wales. I go there quite often. I'm actually writing a novel about part of it at the moment. So yes, I use places that I know rather than do research and come a cropper.
I think that's a very safe and sensible thing to do. And a lot of your stories do seem to take place by the sea, which is your Hastings.
Hastings is by the sea, and I've been here all this time. and a lot of things happen beside the sea. You meet people there. You know, the lifeboat goes out. I can see the sea from where I'm sitting now, and the lifeboat, you hear the maroon go off, and you know the lifeboat's out. And if you live near the sea, in the old days, not so much now, everyone rushes down to the beach to see what's happening. But that happens less nowadays.
And obviously you've written a lot of stories over the years. Some of them have been published before, some in the book have been published before, some have won prizes. So I'm curious about how you put a collection together. I imagine it's a bit like, who do you invite to a wedding? Who do you leave out? Who do you invite? When you're doing a seating plan, who do you sit next to who? So how did you choose which stories to go in the book and what order to put them in?
Well, that was difficult. I did the collection purely because the pandemic began, and I didn't want to just sit here being afraid of getting it and dying. It seemed pointless. So the novel wasn't going very well. And so then I started to tidy up my desk and started to find stories that I hadn't really done anything with. I mean, several of them had been published in Strandline, and several had been sent off to competitions and been placed or won. And there were others that I'd never done anything with. And so I thought it would be a good idea to put them all together and do a collection. And so that's really what to include and what not. I included everything that I thought would be good enough, as it were.
The
There
order,
were three
quite hard to decide which one goes first, and do you mix the funny ones with the light-hearted ones with the sad ones? How do you do the order?
I didn't know how to do that because there's no central theme. So I just did long, short all the way through.
It's as good a way as any, isn't it? Let's be honest.
I tended to put my favourites towards the end of the book, so that only people who really want to read will find them. So,
and the title is actually the title of the first story. So was it important to you to put that first story first, and why did you choose that one?
The Last Gift. I was going to call the story Think Rainbow, which is the title of one of the other stories. But then with the pandemic, the rainbow came to have a totally different meaning. And as there's no lockdown in any of my stories because they were written before, I had to change it. And I just like the sound, The Last Gift. It's neat and you will remember it and it won't take up too much room on the cover. So I would automatically include, I would put the first, that story as first, yes.
And you mentioned the cover there. The other authors here have spoken about their covers, so let's give a little shout out for your cover and your illustrator.
And
Tell us about her.
Jasmine Lapper-Goodrum, very good friend, wonderful, wonderful artist.
And you're happy with the cover, obviously.
Very happy with it. She did almost exactly what I asked and a lot more, actually.
Which is just what you want. I know you primarily as a poet. I read your previous book, which was all poetry. So do you think moving from poetry to fiction, does the love of language that a poet has, does the love of rhythm and imagery come across into your fiction?
I hope so. I really hope so.
You find that's important to you, that language comes across and enriches your story in some way?
Yes, I find that when I write a poem, I read it out almost immediately, and if it's not right, I keep altering it until it is right. But all the time in between, I'm reading it out loud because it's the sound that matters for me with a poem, meaning as well, but sound first. And I find I do the same thing when I'm writing prose. I'll write a paragraph and look at it and think, now, do I get the point? Is it right? And I'll read it out loud. And if it sounds right, it stays. If it sounds wrong, I'll alter it. And of course, I do that with dialogue and changing my voice for every part so that it must sound natural. It must be what that character would say.
Now, you talking about reading aloud actually brings us beautifully into what we're going to do next, because I've asked Mary to choose her favourite story from the book, to tell us what it is, and actually to read us a little piece.
Okay.
So over to you, Mary. Which story have you chosen?
Paradise. Oh, got it in the wrong place. Sorry. I chose Paradise because that is my favourite story. One moment.
Can you tell us why? What makes it the favourite?
because it's true. Well, part of it's true. I lived for a long time in London, and I was very poor. It's a long time ago, eons ago, before children, before marriage, before everything. And it sounds rather bad. I spent time with tramps. I was not a tramp myself, but I had a job in, I worked in Fleet Street. Doesn't that sound wonderful? Unfortunately, it was Joe Lyons in Fleet Street.
I was going to say, were you the tea lady?
No. And my early morning shift began at 7 o'clock. So I had to catch the very first bus, and the first bus was 5:15, and it was a workers' bus. And I lived in East Dulwich. I quite often missed it, and so I would have to walk. So I was tramping in a way. I had to walk 5-6 miles to get there for the 7 o'clock shift. And there was, I suppose it was Red Cross or somebody used to come with a lorry, you know, with the counter let down, and they would provide hot tea and bread and buns for the tramps. So all the tramps used to gather. This is behind the Temple Church, near is it Waterloo Bridge? And they used to sit there on all the seats, and I'd got time, and they'd say, well, go and have a cup of tea. And I say, no, I can't. I'm not really one of you. I've got a job. But they said, no, go. And so I used to go and have a drink and sit and talk with them. And Paradise, the beginning part, is a story that I was told.
Just give us a little taster, a couple of paragraphs to whet the appetite.
Okay, sorry. Sometimes Jacko dreams Paradise. Sometimes Jacko dreams he has a different name, but his waking always erases it. These days, he is reluctant to leave his bed, not only for its comfort and warmth. As for much of his life, his dream world is the kinder place. This morning, he rises early because someone called an assessor is due at 9. His bare feet skid on the thin mat, which fails to insulate him against a cold concrete floor. Automatically, he reaches under the pillow for his wallet and key, stuffs them into his trouser pocket. He was 6 months in this drafty one-bed ground floor council flat before he stopped sleeping with his shoes, laces tied together, round his neck. His shirt hangs on the back of a chair. That and the single divan are the only pieces of furniture in the room. He draws back the dingy curtains, rubs a circle of vision in the ice. Outside, cars swish by, buses snort as they pull away from the stop. On the far side of the valley, a white road snakes up to another hilltop, where trees half conceal 5 tall buildings. He gazes longingly across this valley. The white road fascinates him. It makes his feet begin to itch again.
Well, you're certainly writing character-led stories, as you said, because we're really drawn into that character. Thank you very much, Mary. I know Rebecca's going to talk about where we can buy all of the books, but you do have a special offer on just for this coming week. Is that right? You might want to tell people about?
Yes, it's available at Amazon, which is straightforward, but I like to support independent bookshops as much as I can. And we have a very nice one in St Leonard's, and it's called the Bookkeeper Bookshop. So if you can pay by check, and if you email the bookkeeper1066@gmail.com, then for 1 week from now until the 1st of April, including the 1st of April, you get it for £5 instead of 10.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Mary.
Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful, everyone. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed that. I'm sure everyone else has been listening as well. And I'm just really inspired by all your like the experience really that's come into all those books. So what we're going to do now is have a Q&A. So if anybody's got any questions, there's quite a few of you out there, so somebody must have a question. So please send them using the Q&A box, which is at the bottom right hand side of the screen. So if I can ask everybody to make their microphones live now so we can hear you. And then and we'll just have to risk the dogs and the children shouting and the cars backfiring and everything else, but it'll be fine. Has everyone got their microphone on? Great, that's brilliant. So to kick us off, while I'm waiting for people to drop some questions in for me. Oh, actually, we did have one comment. So it's from Alex Russian. She says, thanks for a fascinating webinar and well done, everybody. So that's very nice of her. But do you want, what I wanted to ask all of you was,
who was that from?
Oh, Alex Rushton. Alex Rushton.
Alex Rushton. Ah, yes, yes.
So it's very nice.
Another of our novelists.
Yeah, so it's nice, isn't it? She's obviously really enjoyed it. So I hope everyone else has. But what I wanted to ask everybody was, one of the things that fascinates me is the how you write, whether you plan it or whether you kind of wing it. And I just wondered what you guys do and how you go about it. So maybe David would like to kick off. Do you plan or do you wing it?
Well, that was interesting, because I was interested in Mary Rothwell when she writes her short stories, because when I start a novel, normally I'm not sure where it's going to go. You know, I'll start it off, but with a short story, have you already got that beginning, middle and end?
Good heavens, no.
Yeah.
Most of my stories were written for competitions, so there was a deadline, and the number of words was already set. And quite often, as in The Last Gift, the last line was already, so my story had to end with that last line. No, I don't. I usually start with a very, very vague idea of the ending. That's about all. And then I get the first paragraph. It's rather like a poem. And once I get the first paragraph, then more or less we're off and running. But I'm never quite, there's all sorts of temptations to go off at a tangent in different ways. And it depends. If I follow one of those, then the ending will be a different ending. So I don't really have any plan at all.
No.
But I'm writing to a deadline, you see. And,
it's quite an art form, isn't it? Writing a short story, a meaningful short story.
Yes, it's described. Somebody described it as the pinnacle of the writer's art.
Yeah.
So we are.
Does anybody plan really meticulously?
Well, all mine is in my head before I write.
Yeah, so you have planned it. It's up here.
Yeah, it just grows in my mind, and then I go put it on paper.
Yeah.
I have lots of notebooks and writing. I write all the backstory, the history, when somebody was born, when they were married, all those things. Because as you're writing, you have to know them, because otherwise you might find you've written in one version that they were born in 1922, say. Later on, you're making them 3 years younger, or you have to keep a check on the real life, if you like,
on the detail.
Characters.
I'm having a go at a biography at the moment, so I'd really like a private word with David to help me along. But I'm finding, research on the internet is invaluable, because, as someone's pointed out, my great age means that my memory doesn't work all the time. Were you brought up in the East End, David, or what?
I was, yes. In the 50s and 60s. That's where I've got an East End Boomer Remembers. That was my second book.
Right.
And I came out in Shoreditch in the East End. And I've spent the first 24 years there.
Really?
Right. Well done, Mary.
Oh, Mary.
She's got the props.
I've got all the Scriptora books. We published an awful lot now, and I've got them all there on the shelf behind.
It's like Blue Peter, and here's what I prepared earlier.
Yes.
Where would I be without Mary? That's what
I know. We're supposed to song. We could.
With your research, has anybody met really interesting characters in doing their research?
Oh yes, you do, don't you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Because when I was doing research for To Thine Own Self, that all takes place up in Lincolnshire. I met some very interesting people. They wanted to go in the book, which was a bit unfortunate because it was set in Cromwell's time. So I just put a big thank you at the back.
Could have done with a bit of the Doctor Who TARDIS on that one.
Oh.
Go back in time.
I've been having a great time talking to people from Help for Heroes who are sufferers of PTSD, and these guys are amazing, and I've ended up with a whole bunch of friends actually. It's really, really nice. But anyway, we have got questions, so are you guys ready for it? So Pamela Birley, I loved your Regency book, this is Sue, The Apothecary's Gift and your Cromwell book, To Thine Own Self. Is it the challenge of writing about different times and settings the thing that motivates you, or is it something else?
No, it's the challenge of writing a period novel, because I can go back in time. I don't write modern books. I go back in time, and I like to try and live the life that I am actually portraying. And also I find all the research absolutely fabulous, because you could go anywhere for research, and you only have to say to somebody, excuse me, I'm a writer, could you possibly help? And they can't do enough for you. So I enjoy it that way.
Yeah, that's great. And Sue's also said everyone was fascinating, so many different genres, thanks for the webinar. So that's lovely too. Right, Neil says he's got a question for Mary. When you write a short story, does it need more editing than writing a novel?
I wouldn't know that. I haven't completed a novel yet. I've got several half-written ones.
Oh, I should think writing a short story is the point I think David made before, wasn't it? That it's, you know, short is much harder than writing long, I think, because you've got less words to say it with.
I do trim it. I do try to be succinct, if not witty. You know, I always write to 1,500 words, 3,000 words. It can still be a short story if it goes up to 10,000, but I've never been inclined to write them as long as that. And I do cut a lot. I always write more than actually appears on the page. Yeah. Usually 3 or 4 times more.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. You may have noticed I've just put my glasses on because I was trying to read those questions without. I couldn't see at all. So, right. Jenny said, how do the writers think the end of the pandemic might affect their writing, which is what we said before. I want to hear what you guys out there think about how we should write books and whether we should persist with COVID as well. So stick some stuff in the chat about that for us. Guys, what do you think? Are you going to write about the pandemic or forget about it?
No.
Well, I
definitely not.
My biography. I'd written the end. I thought I'd written the end. And then I suddenly thought, I can't finish this book without including the pandemic. So I went back and rewrote it.
I put a little bit at the end of my book, and I put, this book was for the most part written pre-COVID. It seems strange that in 2015, when the book is set, our everyday conduct was so different. I find myself wondering how Emma and Bernie and Andrew and Gary too would behave if their story was happening now, because it is going to make a lot of difference to how people write fiction. You can't ignore something like this. Like you can't ignore the Second World War, the First World War, if you're writing about that period.
No one knows going forward how long it's going to impact.
No, we don't.
Well, that's interesting, Mary should say that, because my story begins during the last war, my biography. And I didn't bother with that. And I gave a brief sketch to a young man to read, find out what he thought. And the first thing he said was, you haven't written anything about the war. So I had to go back and write a piece about...
Sorry, Martin, was that the Boer War? Or the...
I do write a bit about the Boer War, yes. But that's from my grandparents.
Oh, you've got a lot of questions coming in now.
I know. So this one's for David. Did you prefer writing about your life in the East End boomer, or do you like fiction better, and why?
Oh.
Well, I certainly found the fiction more difficult, that's for sure. You know, when I was writing from memory and experience, I found it it came out, it flooded out. But certainly writing the fiction is a lot more difficult because you, as Mary says, you have to keep your details exactly right and you don't stray off line. And yeah, so I would say that the autobiography, you know, that was easy comparison. Yeah, I found.
Thank you. So, right, Graham's asking Mary Rensten, COVID times, would a novel with a strong COVID theme or aspect become of its time afterwards? Hoping that there is an after COVID era in the same way that a wartime book is defined by the events of that period.
Oh, I think definitely, yes. If somebody is writing one, but I think you'd have to really wait until it was over. Although, unless it was meant to be specifically a COVID novel, yes, I'm certain you could do that. It'd be very interesting. We'll get them, and we'll get films as well, won't we?
Yes, yeah. I mean, we sat at the beginning of lockdown, first lockdown, and we watched Outbreak. And what was it? All the other ones. There's a whole series of like pandemic films just to scare ourselves stupid. But right, and now there's some guy here called John Rensten, who I presume must be some sort of relative. Is that a relative? Yes.
Yes, definitely.
Yes. So this will be a really horrible question because if he's a relative, he won't be nice to you, Mary. So he said, slightly off topic. Oh, what's coming? Just how at 91 do you still look like you are in your 60s? That's for love, John, your son. I think that's just really creepy. And what are you after, mate? That's what I want to know. Never trust a child that says something like that.
You wait, John. Thank you, darling.
Mary, what is your soap that you use?
I don't.
Tell me you were 60. You were 60, Mary, I'm sure. So anyway, right. Now just going back, we've got a few more comments. Oh, got Sarah Thomas, who said, just wanted to say hello to Mary and Martin. Lovely to see you. And a new book out, Mary. Fantastic. Wonderful to listen to all the writers today. Very inspiring.
Sarah Thomas, you may know the name. Dear friend, came to one of our functions. Actress, you may know her from Last of the Summer Wine. She came to one of our lunches.
She saved my life in the production. I had learned the wrong version of a play, and they'd let me off a week's rehearsal. So when I turned up, I didn't know a word, and I had to have a friend, and Sarah was wonderful to me. She took me all through the part over and over again, so I knew it better than anyone else.
So she wasn't the one you strangled with no clothes on then? That wasn't her.
The reverse. She and I got on very well on stage.
Oh, it's lovely. And then Sandra Howard says, I've really enjoyed hearing you all too, and I'm looking forward to details at the publishing house, as well, of course, about buying the books. And that's Sandra Howard. That's lovely. That's lovely. So we've got an interview coming up with Sandra. I can't remember the date off the top of my head. It's May. Oh, Sandra might help me. It's just I haven't written it. Mary, Pamela, do you remember the date? Is it the 12th?
I think it's now the 12th, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's the 12th of May. It'll be in the bulletin coming out anyway, but that'll be a really great interview with Sandra, so I'm really looking forward to doing that one. So that's everything. That's all the comments from everybody. And yes, she just said it's the 11th of May. Thanks, Sandra. That's great. I've got too many windows open. I can't cope with any more information on my computer screen at the moment. But that's great. Well, thank you ever so much, everybody. It's been absolutely brilliant. I think you've all really presented your books beautifully. So well done, everyone. And thank you so much to everyone else for coming along and listening to us today. So if you want to buy any of the books, they are all available on Amazon. That's right, isn't it? Everybody's available on Amazon.
And Waterstones.
Yes. Yeah, that's great.
And Waterstones.
Brilliant.
Yes, and lots of other bookshops too. Yes. Could we ask the people very kindly, if they are reading and enjoy, please could you review it on Amazon? It does help. It's lovely to get lots of reviews of our books.
Yeah,
now we don't want them 1 or 2 stars, but if you don't like it, say so. Yes, please, because it all helps us to learn more, doesn't it?
Of course, Mary does pay as well for a review. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But yeah, I mean, it does really help authors if you do the review.
Oh, we got another one.
Okay. Oh, yeah, Mary Drake says thank you to all for a really enjoyable and interesting session. So that's brilliant. So I think we'll round it up there then for everybody. So thanks ever so much. And if you would like to hear anything more about the kind of interviews we do, so for example, listening to Sandra Howard talking about her writing, then please join the Society if you're not already a member and support us. It's incredibly reasonable to become a friend, and you really do get value because all of the sessions with authors are free once you become a member. So so please do go to our website and sign up immediately, because to be honest, you're just missing out if you don't. And we'll see you
Rebecca,
all
could
soon.
I ask a question, please? Are you recording this? Because I know there are several people who would love to be here and can't.
Yes, it's being recorded and it will go on our YouTube channel, and will go up on the website as well. So yeah, it's all fine. So if you...
Rebecca, can I correct something that you said?
Yes, go for it.
You said I was a member of the Hastings Writers Group and a literati. I was a member of Hastings Writers Group. I haven't been there for some years, and the literati unfortunately died. So I'm not a member of either of those at the moment.
Oh,
I don't want to claim membership of something that I'm not a member of.
I'm sure nobody's will, but that's fine. Thank you. Right, well, thanks ever so much, everybody. See you again soon. Take care. All right. Bye, everyone. Bye. Bye.